Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter entitled Purusha Sukta Confirmed, which is Canto 2, Chapter 6. Shri Jametan Yukto Ham Haro Harati Tadvasha Vishvam Purusha Rupena Paripati Trishakti Drik Shri Jametan Yukto Ham Haro Harati Tadvasha Vishvam Purusha Rupena Paripati Trishakti Drik Shri Jametan Yukto Ham Haro Harati Tadvasha Vishvam Purusha Rupena Paripati Trishakti Drik Shri Jame do create Tat by his Niyukta appointment Aham I Hara Lord Shiva Harati destroys Tat Pasha under his subordination Vishvam the whole universe Purusha the personality of Godhead Rupena by his eternal form Paripati maintains Tri Shakti Drik, the controller of the three energies. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki. By His will I create. Lord Shiva destroys, and He Himself, in His eternal form as the personality of Godhead, maintains everything. He is the powerful controller of these three energies. Purport. The conception of one without a second is clearly confirmed here. The one is the Lord Vyasadeva, and only by his different energies and expansions are different manifestations, both in the material and in the spiritual worlds, maintained. In the material world also, Lord Vyasadeva is everything, as stated in the Bhagavatam 7.19. Vyasadeva sarvam iti. Everything is Vyasadeva only. In the Vedic hymns also, the same Vyasadeva is held to be supreme. It is said in the Vedas, Vyasadevat paro brahman nachanyo ritoste tatpataha. In fact, there is no greater truth than Vyasadeva. And Lord Krishna affirms the same truth in the Bhagavad Gita 7.7. Mata parapataram nanyat. There is nothing above me, Lord Krishna. So the conception of oneness, as overly stressed by the impersonalists, is also accepted by the personalist devotees of the Lord. The difference is that the impersonalist denies personality in the ultimate issue, whereas the devotees give more importance to the personality of Godhead. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains this truth in the verse under discussion. Lord Vyasadeva is one without a second, but because of his all-powerful, he can expand himself as well as display his omnipotencies. The Lord is described here as omnipotent by three energies, Tri Shakti Drik. So primarily, his three energies are eternal, marginal, and external. The external energies is also displayed in the three modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Similarly, the internal potency is also displayed in three spiritual modes, Samvit, Sadhini, and Hladini. The marginal potency of the living entities is also spiritual, Paraktim Vidi Mim Param, but the living entities are never equal to the Lord. The Lord is Narasta Samya Atishaya. In other words, no one is greater than or equal to the Supreme Lord. So the living entities, including such great personalities as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, are all subordinate to the Lord. In the material world also, in his eternal form of Vishnu, he maintains and controls all the affairs of the demigods, including Brahma and Shiva. First of all, I'd like to offer my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and my spiritual master, and I kindly beg for the blessings of the senior Vaishnavas that I may see something of value today. So today I'm going to touch on a few points which we just heard in the purport, which is on Krishna's supremacy, both in the material and spiritual worlds, his energies and expansions. We'll talk a little bit about Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva's position. Then towards the end we'll talk about how one can understand such topics. So first of all, I just wanted to touch on Krishna's supremacy. In this purport it talks about that. And it's stated within the Bhagavad Gita 7:12, Krishna says that I am the source of both the spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage me in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela 5:142, Lord Krishna alone is the supreme controller, and all others are his servants. They dance as he makes them do. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela 7:7, Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasure, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, the Supreme Controller. No one is greater than or equal to Sri Krishna, yet he appears as the son of Nanda Maharaj. Because Lord Krishna demonstrates his godhood by displaying to Arjuna his universal form, wherein lay everything and everyone in existence, the planets, the stars, and the universes, as well as all living beings, celestial, terrestrial, and subterrestrial, Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and all other deities are different parts of his Vishnu Rupa. So in the verse we see that no one is greater than or equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We see a lot of people in today's world, they may think that Lord Shiva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Some may think that Lord Brahma is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Lord Brahma has only 78 attributes in full compared to Lord Krishna, and Lord Shiva has almost 84 attributes in full compared to Lord Krishna. We see a lot of people in today's society may think that Lord Brahma is the controller of the universe. He's putting everything together, so he must be the Supreme Lord. But much more happens before Lord Brahma takes his place here within this material world. Lord Krishna, first of all, he expands himself into Karoda Dakshini Vishnu, and he lays on the causal ocean. And by his glance to Maya Devi, he creates the material world. Then he expands himself again into Gabadai Dakshini Vishnu, into all these universes which comes from Karuna Dakshini Vishnu's pores. These universes are called Brahmanandas, and it's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto, chapter 3, that when Gabadai Dakshini Vishnu enters these Brahmanandas, these universes, they're black and full of space. And he perspirates and he fills up half that universe with his perspiration, and he lays on his perspiration. And from there, a lotus stems from his navel. And Lord Brahma is there. And all the planetary systems are within that stem. And from there, Gabadai Dakshini Vishnu expands himself again to Kishori Dakshini Vishnu in all the living entities' hearts. So we see here that Lord Brahma is just He's the one who puts everything together within these material universes. He's not the Supreme Lord. He's a worker of the Supreme Lord, a servant of the Supreme Lord, you could say. And Lord Brahma also got bewildered by the Supreme Lord in his cowherd boy pastimes. Lord Brahma was thinking, how could the Supreme Personality of Godhead be a cowherd boy? That's impossible. He's just running around in the paddocks, he's playing a flute. He goes, I'm going to test him out. No way he can be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he takes away all the other cowherd boys and all the cows. Then Krishna counteracts with his supreme potencies, and he just replaces him. Replaces all the cowherd boys and all the cows. And Lord Brahma was shocked. This went on for a year. Even the mothers of the cowherd boys, the parents, no one even realised that they were missing. And it's then that Lord Brahma realised Krishna's supreme energies. And he went on to say prayers after that. And also in this verse it mentions Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva realised Krishna's supremacy as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially in the Banasura story. So Banasura was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva gave Banasura a boon. That was to have 1,000 arms. And there was a time when Banasura played the drum for Lord Shiva when he was dancing. And Lord Shiva was very happy with Banasura, and he gave him, he said he was very pleased with him, and he said he would reside in his city to protect him. The only thing was that Banasura had an enemy, and that enemy was Krishna. And they came head to head. And they're all having this big fight. Banasura, Lord Krishna's taking on Banasura. Yeah? Was it Banasura? Or Shiva? Lord Shiva. Krishna's taken on Lord Shiva. And they're having this big fight. Banasura is taken on Balaram. And Banasura releases one of his weapons, and Lord Krishna counteracts that with one of his weapons, the Narayanastra. And again he fires another weapon, which is the yawning weapon. And after that, Lord Shiva was just bewildered. He's all fatigued, he's yawning. And Parashuram said that was at that moment when all the sages and demigods realised that Krishna was the Supreme. So that was a very nice story. We also see Lord Shiva gets bewildered in the Bhagavatam by Mohini Murti. He's there with his wife, he just loses everything. He's Yogamaya. Lord Shiva doesn't get touched by the Maya that we get touched by, but Yogamaya. And he just ran off after this woman into the forest. And after a while, a few incidents happened. A few incidents happened within that forest. And Lord Shiva pulled back and thought, oh, I've been dragged in here by some kind of Krishna's energies. So once again, Lord Krishna here is displaying his supremacy. And Lord Shiva's got a very interesting position. Vaishnavanam Yatra Sambhu. Lord Shiva is the greatest of all Vaishnavas. In the Brahma Samhita, it describes the relationship between Lord Krishna and Lord Shiva as follows. Siram yatadari vikara vishishya yogat sanjayate nahitata bahagaste heto ya sambhutam apetata sumupatikarat govindamari pujam tamaham bhajame. So Lord Shiva is described in the Brahma Samhita to be just like curd or yogurt. Curd is not different from milk, since milk is transformed into curd. In one sense, curd is also milk. Similarly, Shiva is in one sense the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in another sense he is not. Just as curd is milk, yet we have to distinguish between the two. Lord Brahma explains that many candles lit by a single candle may look similar, yet one candle remains the original. Krishna is like that original candle because he is the source of Lord Shiva and all other spiritual and material energies. We've also seen more ecstatic pastimes where Krishna shows his supremacy with Indra. Indra wasn't happy after Krishna told his father, hey, let's not direct our worship towards Indra but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Lord Indra rained down torrents of rain and flooded Govardhan. And once again, Krishna showed his supremacy by lifting Govardhan hill. So once again, Krishna showing his supremacy. So Krishna's energies, we can choose Krishna's temporary material energy or his eternal energy. What will we choose? I've been reading the Jaiva Dharma at the moment by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he says that we can choose between these two. We can choose our original state, which is unbroken, pure and eternal, or we can choose the conditional state, which is pathetic, broken and impure. So we have the two choices here. So yeah, Lord Krishna is looking after all of this. So his energies, both the material and the spiritual world. I struggle to look after the paraphernalia room. So yeah. So in the other day, Vaishnavi had her class. I think it was maybe about 4 days ago or something like this. And she was saying that our eyes need to be anointed with love to be able to see and to be able to understand Krishna. If we really want to understand Krishna's energies, his expansions and so forth, we need to put ourselves in the best possible position. Here in the material world, we've got so many energies which are very bewildering, and it's very hard for us to stay focused on the path towards Krishna, leading us to understand him more and more. So first of all, we have the 4 defects of conditional life. So we have the propensity to cheat, we make mistakes, we're under illusion, and we've got imperfect senses. We've got the 3 modes of material nature, which are like puppet strings above us: Sattvagun, Tamagun and Rajagun. So passion, ignorance and goodness. We've got the 3-fold miseries, which are torments in everyone: Adibhuddhika, Adidevika, Adhyatmika. We've got birth, disease, old age and death, which are constantly just chasing us around and everyone's trying to run away. You know, I don't want to get sick, I don't want to get any injuries, I'm going to try to avoid old age at any cost. We see a lot of people these days are trying to avoid old age. 90-year-olds trying to look like 20-year-olds. Then we've got another great entanglement, which is eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So this is all throughout the material world, and this can really pull one back from understanding Krishna's ultimate truths and drag one away from truth. So we must overcome these entanglements, and we must live our lives on a holy platform to understand Krishna's true position and standing. Bhakti Tirtha Swami tells a story in one of his books about, we call it a dream he had involving Srila Prabhupada, and eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and how it entangles one within the material world and makes it difficult to understand these higher spiritual truths. So Srila Prabhupada comes to Bhakti Tirtha Swami and he asked him, do you want to go on a voyage? I want to show you something. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami, yes, my dear spiritual master, I'll be very happy to go on a voyage with you. And he says, just one thing, you've got to listen and observe. And he's like, Okay, I can do that. So they start on their journey. The first place they go is under the ocean. There's a whole civilization there. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami's like, what's going on here? And somehow he had the ability to hear what they were talking about. And in this whole completely different civilization, the same thing was going on. People were making plans. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And Prabhupada grabs his hand and he goes, let's go. Let's go to our next venue. Then they go to the core of the earth. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he can't believe it. He's like, there's a civilization here? And Prabhupada nods. And once again, the same thing's going on. Arrangements, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Prabhupada looks at him, my dear son, just listen and observe. And he grabs Prabhupada's hand and he goes, I want to show you something else. Then they go down to the lower planetary systems. Atala, Mahatala, Patala, and roll way down to Narak, the hellish places, planets. And he's so frightened, he's grabbing Srila Prabhupada. He's shaking. Prabhupada looks at him. Listen and observe. And he's so frightened, he's there, he's shaking, he's grabbing onto Srila Prabhupada, but he gains his composure. And once again, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. It's happening all the way down there. Then he grabs him again. My dear son, just listen and observe. They go into the higher planetary systems. They experience some of those systems there, Mahaloka. He observes, he listens, the same thing is going on there. Prabhupada even takes him to other universal systems out there, other planetary systems I should say. And he experienced those other planetary systems also. And the same thing was going on. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Entangling everyone here within the material world. Then Srila Prabhupada looks at him and says, do you want to come home? And he's like, of course. I want to see home. And Srila Prabhupada grabs him and they start to enter the spiritual world. Vaikuntha, Adyoda, Dwarka, Mathura, Goloka Vrindavan. They've entered the spiritual world. He can barely contain himself. Every molecule in his body is just completely ecstatic. His senses are interchangeable. He can smell with his eyes. He can see with his ears. He's trying to bring himself together. He first sees how beautiful Goloka Vrindavan is. The trees waving as if dancing. The cowherd boys are playing within the fields. The animals grazing, galloping around. Full of so much energy, so much vibrance. He can barely still stand. Srila Prabhupada looks at him and he says, just listen and observe, my dear son. And he's listening and he's observing. And it's the same. There's eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Prabhupada looks at him and he says, listen and observe. And he listens and he observes. But he's seen something different here. They're eating in the spiritual world, but there's no need to eat. But in the spiritual world, they eat for Krishna. They eat to enhance the pastimes of Krishna. They want to share lunches between each other. They want to throw grapes into Krishna's mouth. So by doing this activity within the spiritual world, it actually enhances the pastimes. It actually enhances the bliss of Krishna and all those around. Then there's sleeping. No one needs to sleep in the spiritual world. But once again, they sleep for another reason. They sleep to enhance the forever colourful pastimes of Krishna, to be able to lay their heads on other cowherd boys, to be able to watch Krishna fall asleep, to be able to read stories to each other before you go to sleep. So once again, it's done for Krishna. Defending. No one needs to defend in the spiritual world. Everyone knows that Krishna is the supreme controller. Krishna's their everything in the spiritual world. So what do they have to defend? But once again, they defend to just turn some rasa there within the spiritual world, to bring more colour to that pastime, to increase Krishna's pleasure. Mating. They don't need to mate within the spiritual world. But once again, the mating's done there for Krishna, to enhance that pastime, to bring more vibrance to that pastime. So this is what he's saying. And he's saying to Srila Prabhupada, I'm understanding. And he looks at him and he goes, I want to stay here, Srila Prabhupada. You can't stay here, you're not ready yet. You've got some work to do still. And from this story, we see that there's so many things going on within the material world. There's so many distractions, so many things that can pull us back from the ultimate truth. So many of our actions are misdirected. We're so caught up in Krishna's external energy, caught up in our own problems, caught up in other people's problems. But we see when we change our consciousness, when we change the way we think about things, and we direct our endeavours towards Krishna, when we direct our thoughts towards Krishna, when we direct our activities towards Krishna, everything shifts then. We're no longer caught up in these lower energies, being completely bewildered, completely lost, completely dazed, completely confused. But we rise above. We rise above all of that. And that's when we become blissful. That's when we become happy. And that's when we become ecstatic. Because all our energies are directed in the right position. And that right position is towards Krishna. As stated in this verse, that Krishna is the supreme truth. He is the supreme Lord. No one is equal to or greater to him. So by serving him, the topmost, by serving Krishna, we're going to get the ultimate result. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, when he was on his deathbed, he said something really nice. He said, O son of Nanda Maharaj, I offer this body and this mind and everything I have to you. And he understood. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, he was a Paramahamsa. And a Paramahamsa is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam as someone who's an extraordinary personality, has no taste for the material world, and is continuously drinking the nectar dripping from the Lord's feet. So if we're following footsteps like this, we're going to be going in a very, very nice direction. So that's the attitude that we should have, offering our body, our mind, everything to Krishna. And by that, we're less bewildered by these energies here within the material world. We start operating on a spiritual platform. There's so many distractions here within the material world, so many things pulling us here, there and everywhere. As I said last time, especially in today's society of the last couple of years, there's so many things which can pull us away from truth, so many things that can lead us to stop our service, to retreat. But no, we should follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, and no matter what's happening around us, we should always just be pushing forward, giving our mind, body and everything we have to Krishna. And then we'll be happy. Then we'll attain true happiness. So thank you. That's it for today. Is there any questions, corrections, comments? Yeah, I can repeat.
I wonder if you can share how we can stay enthusiastic when we go through difficulties. There's so many distractions.
Oh yeah.
How do we stay focused?
Giridhari was saying, his question was, how can we stay enthusiastic when there's so many difficulties here within the material world? So yeah, I was mentioning all the difficulties here within the material world, and all the distractions. For myself and my understanding and my realization, whenever there's difficulties, instead of retreating like I just mentioned in that class and turning away from service or turning away from the devotees, especially during difficult times, we're seeing some difficult times now, you should always direct yourself in service. So always get that attitude of giving your mind, your body and everything to Krishna, and you'll stay protected. Krishna will look after you then. And also making sure that you're around devotees who have that same attitude, who aren't stopping service when they go through difficult times, who aren't stopping service when there's some impediments. Yeah, to put yourself in the association of devotees who push forward no matter what. And that's how I would say you stay enthusiastic. It's very important, association. And always just putting Krishna first. We're going to have problems here within the material world. To have this material body, it's said to be a burden. There's always problems. We've got to understand that. We know that. Deep down we know that there's always going to be problems within this material world. But we've always got to keep, as Ganga Prabhu would say, who was here last year, you've got to always keep the main thing. And that is Krishna. He's the main thing. We're his internal servitors. So we keep that main thing of serving Krishna. We're going to be happy. Even throughout those difficult times. It may be a bit difficult. It may be difficult to get up and go to service. We may feel tired. But if we just keep marching forward and just doing our regulated service, Krishna will reward us. We have to be above the modes of nature. If we fall below that, then we just get washed away. But we've always got to make an endeavour to stay above all these energies. And by doing that, we do that by continuing our service and coming to the temple and chanting your rounds, even within difficult times. Any other questions? Connor?
How do we measure success in spiritual life?
How do we measure success in spiritual life? Bhakti... I was reading this not that long ago. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I can't quote this, someone else might know this, but I was reading something of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, And one of the elements is that one becomes more detached from material things. So if one's on the spiritual path and they see that they become more and more detached from certain things which they were really attached to in the past. So you see people come into Krishna consciousness very new, and just little things, like they could be attached to like a football team, a certain party venue, or a certain group of friends, but as soon as they take up devotional service, those kind of things will just fall to the wayside. So they're the kind of lower attachments. Then as you would advance, there'll be greater attachments that which you'll let go of. And also, I think the attachment to association of devotees, attachment to one's service, attachment to spiritual communities like this, attachment to Prabhupada's books, that would be showing one if they're progressing along the spiritual path. You know, if you were still attached to, you know, your local football team, and you still were attached to other certain elements in your life and they just weren't going away, you would have to like have a good look at some of your practice and see what you can improve and what you can work on. Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else?
You seem to have a propensity to focus on personalities like Bhaktisiddhanta or even like what's his name?
Jayananda.
Jayananda. And could you share with us how do you focus on like one person at a time, or is it natural that you have? Is it for an extended period of time? Do you focus on one person?
Yeah, I suppose it kind of changed, like in.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. So Giridhari was asking me that I always look up to spiritual figures, certain Vaishnavas. He was asking me, do I change them or do I have the same? How do I cultivate that? So first of all, when I first came into Krishna consciousness, I was really inspired by Jayananda Thakur. I was just always very drawn towards him. I liked his service attitude. He didn't really let anything disturb him. He always put Prabhupada's mission first in his life. Didn't worry about his own, things so much. Prabhupada's mission meant the world to him, pushing forward Prabhupada's movement, making sure it spread all over the world. So that made me drawn to him, just his enthusiasm, especially around Prabhupada and how much he loved Prabhupada. And my attachment to Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, that came a little differently. That came... he started to come to me in dreams and I just got really attached to him. Then I started to read about him and focus on him a bit more, and I just think that his attitude towards spiritual life was really nice, and his ability to preach and the love he had in his heart for all jivas, and his desire to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. It's just really inspiring. For me, anyone who's like given their life to Prabhupada and pushing forward this movement no matter what, and doing their service no matter what, I just find that really inspiring. Yeah. Vaishnavi?
You answered partially about how, despite everything, we should still continue on and associate with devotees who are determined.
Yeah.
How do we, could you talk a bit more about devotee circles, how we can remain fixed, like not get so caught up in...
So how can we remain fixed within devotional circles without being...
Yes, in the devotional circles, without being too distracted in that individual, in our own kind of things that we're going through, whether it's powerful, other staff and with other devotees or people who are close to us.
Mm.
How do we remain focused? Because it's a bit different with devotees and TVs. We could talk a bit more about the devotees, how we do that.
How we can stay focused together. So Vaishnavi was saying, how can we stay focused together within devotee circles, not just like worldwide circles? Or,
You mentioned about previously in class that we get distracted by what's happening with our own lives
Yeah.
with others. But how do we, that's like in the material world, it's a bit different, but when it comes to Krishna consciousness, we're still conditioned, but how do we have the proper, the right way? You answered partially about being in association with devotees who are determined that you go on despite, but we also have different natures and sometimes we're more affected by stuff.
okay.
How do we cultivate that in the association with devotees?
Yeah. So even within our close circles, when we're having difficulties in that, we can still get affected by other things going on around us, our own problems, other people's problems. But yeah, we have to have compassion for others around us who are going through their difficulties. We have to be willing to listen to some of the problems that they're experiencing. And I think our friends and other devotees, the ones close to us should, especially the close ones, I'm sure they'll be willing to listen to certain things that we're going through. But yeah, just once again, you got to keep the spiritual goal in mind. So we're all going to have these kind of surface problems. We've got to have compassion for that, and we've got to have care for that. But true compassion is on a spiritual platform, so the spiritual soul within the material body. So that's what really matters. So we've always got to keep that in mind. Although we're going to be having our physical problems and our mind difficulties, and we're going to have to share this between each other, and it could cause some problems within circles and with devotees with other devotees, but still we should always look past that and understand that at the end of the day we are spirit souls, and we can guide each other and help each other towards the ultimate goal. So definitely we have to pay attention to these problems and different things that we're experiencing in our own lives. But yeah, as a community, we should really support each other in that ultimate goal. At the end of the day, we're all spirit souls, we're all servants of Krishna, and we're all trying to achieve the same thing, and that is to go back to Krishna. So all these are things, they can just be little distractions, although at the time they may seem very, very real, and they are real. But yeah, just be compassionate to each other, but yeah, real compassion is on that spiritual level. Srila Prabhupada ki